The USS Enterprise is the central starship in the fictional Star Trek universe, depicted in 6 network television series, 12 feature films, and countless books and fan-created media. The original Star Trek series features a voiceover by Enterprise Captain James T. Kirk, which describes the mission of Enterprise as to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. The ship's design formed the basis for one of sci-fi's most iconic images. A refit version of NCC-1701 appears in the first 3 Star Trek films. The 2009 Star Trek film, which takes place in an alternate timeline, features a reconceptualization of the original Enterprise. The original starship was destroyed in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. Origin and design. Television series Star Trek art director Matt Jefferies was the primary designer of the original Enterprise, which was originally named Yorktown. In series creator Gene Roddenberry's first outline drafts of the series. Jefferies' experience with aviation led to his Enterprise designs being imbued with what he called aircraft logic. However, Jefferies years later confessed to have taken some inspiration and artistic license from electric stove coils. The ship's NCC-1701 registry number stemmed from NC, being one of the international aircraft registration codes assigned to the United States. The second C was added for differentiation. According to The Making of Star Trek, NCC is the Starfleet abbreviation for Naval Construction Contract, comparable to what the U.S. Navy would call a HA number. The 1701 was chosen to avoid any possible ambiguity. According to Jefferies, the numbers Chapter 3, 6, 8, and 9 are too easily confused. Other sources cite it as a reference to the house across the street from where Roddenberry grew up, while another account gives it as the street address of Linwood Dunn. Jefferies' own sketches provide the explanation that it was his 17th cruiser design with the first serial number of that series, 1701. The Making of Star Trek explains that US should mean United Spaceship, and that the Enterprise is a member of the Starship class. The first miniature built for the pilot episode, the cage was unlit and approximately 3 feet long. It was modified during the course of the series to match the changes eventually made to the larger miniature, and appears on set in Requiem for Methuselah. The second miniature built for the original pilot measures 11 feet 2 inches long and was built by a small crew of model makers supervised by Richard Dayton, working out of Jensen's model shop in Burbank, California. It was initially filmed by both Howard A. Anderson and Linwood G. Dunn at Dunn's Film Effects of Hollywood facility, who also refilmed later more elaborate models of the ship, generating a variety of stock footage that could be used in later episodes. Initially, the model was static and had no electronics. For the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, various details were altered, and the starboard window ports and running lights were internally illuminated. When the series was picked up and went into production, the model was altered yet again. These alterations included the addition of translucent domes and blinking lights at the forward ends of the engine nacelles, smaller domes at the stern end of the engine nacelles, a shorter bridge dome, and a smaller deflector, sensor dish, save for reused footage from the 2 pilot episodes. This was the appearance of the ship throughout the series. The 11-feet model is undergoing restoration, having previously been displayed in the gifts shop downstairs at the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Greg Jen created a model of the original Enterprise for the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode, Trials and Tribulations. Jen's model was built to be exactly half the size of the larger of the 2 original models, and later appeared in the 1998 Star Trek wall calendar. In addition, a CGI model of the ship makes a brief cameo appearance at the end of the final episode of Star Trek Enterprise. These are the voyages, and another CGI version was created for remastered episodes of the original Star Trek, based on the model in the Smithsonian 1979 motion picture refit. The refit Enterprise that appears in the first 3 Star Trek films was designed by Richard Taylor, Michael Miner, Gene Roddenberry, Joe Jennings, Andrew Probert, Douglas Trumbull, Harold Michelson, and Jim Dow contributed in part to the final and finished look of the Enterprise. The ship was based on conceptual sketches done by Jeffries for the scrap Star Trek Phase 2 TV series. Paul Olson painted the distinct Aztec paint scheme to provide an additional level of detail for the film screen, and to suggest the notion of interlocking panels providing tensile strength to the hull. The 8-foot model was reused as the USS Enterprise A in the 4th, 5th, and 6th Star Trek movies. Foundation Imaging created a CGI model of the ship for the Director's Edition release of Star Trek, the motion picture, to add footage envisaged but never shot by director Robert Wise. 2009 Star Trek film The Enterprise was redesigned for the 2009 Star Trek movie. Director J.J. Abrams wanted the Enterprise to have a hot rod look while retaining the traditional shape, but otherwise afforded Industrial Light and Magic tremendous leeway in creating the ship. Concept artist Ryan Church's initial designs were modeled and refined by set designer Joseph Hayura. This design was then given to ILM for further refinement and developed into photorealistic models by Alex Yeager's team. ILM's Roger Guyatt recalled the original Enterprise being very static, and added moving components to the film's model. ILM retained subtle geometric forms and patterns to allude to the original Enterprise. The computer model's digital paint recreates the appearance of interference paint, which contains small particles of mica to alter the apparent color, used on the first 3 films' model. Depiction. Built between 2243 and 2245 in the Star Trek timeline, Starfleet commissioned the USS Enterprise in 2245. In Star Trek, the ship's dedication plaque lists it as Starship Class. Later expanded universe and episode dialogue in Relics, a Next Generation episode, established the vessel as a Constitution-class starship. But according to Stephen Whitfield's The Making of Star Trek, the Enterprise-class starships have been in existence for about 40 years. At the time of the original series, the ship's components were built at the Starfleet division of the San Francisco Navy Yards and assembled in orbit. Star Trek The Animated Series states that Robert April is the Enterprise's first commanding officer. After April, Captain Christopher Pike commands the Enterprise for about a decade, and Pike is the commanding officer in the pilot, The Cage. Throughout the first Star Trek television series, Captain James T. Kirk commands the ship on a 5-year mission of exploration. Before the events of Star Trek the motion picture, the Enterprise undergoes an 18-month refit overseen by its new commanding officer, Willard Decker. In early scenes of the film, Decker describes the refit to Admiral Kirk as an almost totally new Enterprise. Star Trek novels and the semi-official fan-produced internet series Star Trek New Voyages depict a second 5-year exploratory mission under Kirk's command between the events of the first and second films. Spock commands the Enterprise, serving as a training ship, at the beginning of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, but Kirk assumes command when the ship investigates problems with Project Genesis. The US-reliant, hijacked by Khan Noonien Singh, inflicts substantial damage to the Enterprise. Spock sacrifices his life to save the ship. Shortly after returning to space dock at the beginning of Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, the Enterprise is marked for decommissioning. Kirk leads his officers in stealing the ship in an attempt to restore Spock's life. In the process they are attacked by Klingons, inflicting mortal damage on the ship, to even the odds and gain a tactical advantage. Kirk is forced to destroy the Enterprise by activating its self-destruct system. Star Trek IV. The voyage home opens with Kirk and his officers agreeing to return to Earth to face judgment for their actions in the previous film. En route, they travel back in time to stop a probe threatening to destroy Earth. Upon the success of their mission and return to the 23rd century, the charges against the crew are dismissed. Admiral Kirk is punished with a demotion in rank to captain and is given command of the Enterprise's successor, the USS Enterprise. NCC-1701A. 2009 reimagining. In the 2009 film Star Trek, Captain Christopher Pike commands the Enterprise on its maiden voyage in 2258 to respond to a distress call from Vulcan. When Pike is captured, command nominally shifts to Commander Spock and later to James T. Kirk when Spock is shown to be emotionally compromised. At the film's conclusion, Kirk is promoted to captain and receives command of the Enterprise, with Spock as first officer. The reimagined Enterprise appears again in the 2013 sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness. According to the trailer for the third film in the reimagining, Star Trek Beyond, the Enterprise will be destroyed by an unknown new enemy. Cultural impact. A writing campaign led to the first space shuttle being named Enterprise rather than Constitution. Because of the efficiency of its style and layout, the Enterprise's bridge design was once considered for use by the United States Navy. More precisely, the layout of task stations caused the Navy to rethink the division of labor for managing rapidly changing information. Helmsman focuses on immediate steering requirements. Navigator plans helmsman's next actions. Captain plans strategy while looking over the shoulders of both. Without visual distraction, the captain is told from behind about engine status, weapons status, and fleet communications. The original series-era Enterprise appears on a commemorative stamp released by the United States Postal Service. Virgin Galactic named its first commercial spaceship the USS Enterprise in honor of the Star Trek vessel. The Canadian town of Vulcan, Alberta, created a 31-foot model starship inspired by Star Trek's Enterprise. The operations aboard the Enterprise have been used as an analogy for practices in human resources management. A website was created proposing a functional spacecraft with a layout like the Enterprise that could be used as a fully functioning interplanetary craft, and could, according to the author, be built with current technology in as little as 20 years.